Hi everyone, welcome to the Finance Story Live, where we bring you exciting trends, insights, and opportunities. And this series is brought to you by Startup Movers and Paisy. I'll send you their link in the comment below, so do check them out. So it's been a while since we invited a guest to help us understand the UAE and the GCC market. So today we are going to talk about UAE Middle East with Lewis, who is the founder at Queenswood, a recruitment firm focused entirely on finance and accounting hiring. So, Lewis, thanks a ton for joining in. I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time, watched a lot of your podcasts, a lot of intelligent questions. So, thanks a ton for making the time. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. And everyone who's watching in, do type in your questions. So, I'll just start with my first question, which is, Louis, you've just started Queenswood, a firm focused on finance and accounting. Why double down on this switch? Why not go broad? Why finance and accounting?
Sure. So 10 years ago, I started recruiting finance and accounting roles in the UK. So that's where I started. That's where my expertise lie. I moved to Dubai 3 or so years ago, recruiting in the same field. And that's where I've built the network. I also think you're always going to need accountancy and finance professionals. Everyone talks about AI, the future disruption, but we're always going to need finance professionals. I also feel that from an expertise point of view, now you, as a recruiter, you need to be a specialist. The days of working as a generalist, we're not paid to just post job adverts online. Our role is really the network, the expertise. If we are working in one niche, we understand what's going on in the market. We understand what challenges are people facing. We're not just there to send CVs. We are there as well to be a bit of a sounding board and provide advice. So I think now to be successful, you do need to be a specialist.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about Queenswood. What are you guys currently hiring right now? What kind of clients, what kind of market are you present in?
Sure. So it's mid to senior level finance roles across all industries, apart from traditional banking. Banking profiles are slightly different, in my opinion. But anything, whether it's a fintech, whether it's construction, family offices, there's a real emergence of those in the region. So really any sector with an accountancy and finance team across the GCC, but I'm probably focusing more at the moment on the UAE. Saudi is a huge market, huge opportunity as well. That will probably come further down the line, but for now, more of a UAE centric focus.
Okay, thank you for this. Louis, I've always been very curious about this. So let me just ask you. I've seen a lot of finance recruiters emerge in the UAE and in Saudi as well, but all of them based in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So what does that tell us about the market? Is the demand exploding, or we see a lot of recruiters chasing the same kind of clients and same kind of roles? What's your take?
Yeah, it's interesting because if I compare it to a market I know as well, which is London, which is obviously much larger in size, I actually don't think there's that many recruiters in the UAE within finance compared to, like I say, London. But I understand your point. If everyone's setting up a recruitment firm, is there a demand? I think there is a demand. As we all know, there is a huge supply of candidates. So you may ask me or others, like, are you really needed? Can people not find the talent themselves? Yes, in some instances, some companies won't work with us and they don't need to. Maybe they have an internal recruitment team or whatever. But I think our main value add is time. Firstly, this is all I do, speak to finance people. So I back myself to meet the requirement very quickly. And also some internal recruitment teams perhaps don't have the expertise in finance. So some of the more technical roles or the more senior roles, I think there'll always be a need for a recruiter. Some of the more junior, perhaps, I think, to be honest, sometimes it can be a bit of a lottery in regards to the strength of the candidate or the caliber of the candidate, because now one of the biggest challenges is CVs. Everyone tells you and writes a great CV, but really, when you get under the bonnet, can they really deliver? And I think that's quite difficult to judge at the more junior level. But yeah, I'd say there is a demand for recruiters. I've set my business up just 6 weeks ago now, and there's definitely been a good demand. So, yeah, positive so far.
Okay. Are you hiring for any role where people could apply? Is there any role on coming up soon?
Yeah, so some of the roles that I've picked up recently, and I think this is a common topic generally around recruitment in the region, is super specialist, super niche, super specific requirements. So, for example, I've had a few roles called in which are Arabic speaking. So you either speak Arabic or you don't, right? And that really does eliminate the talent pool.
Yep.
And I think that's just a general point for job seekers looking to make the move to the region is there is so much supply that now in most cases clients can put together a 10-point shopping list, and we as recruiters typically can find them what they want. And that can be a huge frustration. But in this region, people want someone typically who's already done it. I don't see that many instances where you're someone who maybe ticks 6 out of 10 boxes and you can learn on the job because there's probably an array of people already with that experience. So that is one of the challenges that I think job seekers generally would face. Yeah, the specific specificity on requirements.
Okay. So when you talk about requirements, Lewis, what are the profiles that you see a lot of mandates for? Is it FP&A? Is it finance controller? Would you want to just tell us a lot about that?
There's definitely a demand for commercial FP&A type profiles. Finance teams are understanding the value of what that can bring. Whether they are ready for someone of that nature is a different conversation, because I think there is still a disconnect sometimes in what these people can bring to a finance function. Tax, of course, is a big topic within the region. You're always going to need someone who can, I guess, deal with the auditors, be a more controller, technical profile. Senior roles, there's definitely movement at the senior end. It's just super competitive. Generally, less senior roles, right? So there is less movement than at the mid level, but I am seeing people find opportunities. I think the market is tough, but there's definitely opportunities. I just think now as a candidate, you just need to do more than just applying for a job online. I think that's the overarching frustration that everyone's facing. But yeah, FP&A, less transactional roles could be outsourced. Maybe they're streamlining, but yeah, sometimes outsourced to cheaper locations at that more junior level, unfortunately.
Okay. So, Lewis, you've been recruiting in the UAE and the GCC overall for 3+ years, right? So, what are the roles you've hired most for in the last few years, and what's the average salary range, and which sectors, and how do you compare it to, say, today or the last few months?
Yeah. So mid level is typically I class as someone who's maybe newly qualified, finance manager level up to that number two, right? That up to that head of finance level. Then the super senior roles are typically the number one in finance. I've recruited across the spectrum. I have recruited CFO and senior roles through my network, etc. I have done a lot of recruitment with that number two, someone who, what I see a lot of is you have a CFO who's brought on board to be super strategic, etc. Often they inherit a finance team which is maybe lacking structure or lacking high level of talent maybe, and they can't do everything. So often I see where they bring in a strong number two, whether it's a head of finance, a controller, to really oversee the day-to-day, because the day-to-day needs to be dealt with. So this person is their right hand on the day-to-day, allowing the CFO to be really forward thinking and strategic. So that number two role, I would say there's a lot of requirement for those. But then, yeah, finance manager, controller, really that mid-level, I would say 25 to 50K is where a lot of bulk of the positions are.
Okay. And what could be the salary expectation for the number two? And is there any nationality that they prefer? Is it an Indian CA, or a Pakistani CA, or a CA from the UK? What works best?
Sure. I'm going to sit on the fence. It depends, right? And this is the most
Yeah.
difficult question as a recruiter we get asked. Salaries are a bit of a minefield, if I'm honest. There is such a range, and I think this is the biggest frustration. You could be a head of finance, and you may, for example, I recruited a head of finance, they was earning, say, 40,000 dirhams. They may see a role advertised as a head of finance, and the job spec matches exactly what they're looking to deliver or have experience in. They then have a conversation with the prospective client and they want to spend 20K. Right? And it's so varied. I think industry plays a huge factor. I think location plays a factor. Dubai is probably slightly lower in terms of compensation to Abu Dhabi. Riyadh and Saudi typically would pay slightly more, but even then, Saudi has definitely reduced. From what I know, there were people getting huge uplifts. That
Yeah.
is now possible, but not to that extent. I was at an event probably last year, and they mentioned maybe 20% uplift on a UAE compensation. That was last year. So salaries just vary so much, and that's the biggest the biggest challenge is you don't know until you have those conversations. And I think anyone who's perhaps been in a role 5+ years, say
Yep.
you've been a head of finance for 5+ years in the same organization, you now may be earning more than what that role is now paying in the market. So now you're thinking, well, I would like a change. I'd like a change of scenery, new challenge, but I'm going to need to take a pay cut.
Yep.
So are you willing to do that? Or some people I see just sit tight, and then what we are seeing is a lot of restructuring. So you may be in that position where you're a senior finance professional, you're being compensated very well. Maybe you still have schooling benefit, which isn't guaranteed now, and then a restructure catches you by surprise. You then speak to someone like me, and I have to unfortunately give you some bad news sometimes, or a bit of a reality check that that benefit that you was getting or that salary you was earning just isn't the same now. And I think that is having a knock-on effect at the senior level, especially with less movement. People are moving maybe less than they were, and it's like dominoes. If someone's not leaving, maybe there's not a vacancy to backfill.
Okay. So when you talk about restructuring, you also made a video on it on LinkedIn. So that was actually my next question. So do you see a lot of restructuring happening because a lot of these organizations and companies in the UAE are moving to Egypt? They're shifting their finance teams to Egypt or to India because that's happening in the US, right? Most of the Fortune 500 companies, their finance team is based out of India. So do you see that happening here as well?
Yes, I would say multinationals, especially those large international brands that we all know of,
Yep.
I think are being squeezed in terms of their profitability, and they're looking at ways to cut costs. I've seen various instances whereby maybe they're a US centric multinational, maybe the US is their main market or headquartered, perhaps the US is underperforming. They look at the business on a global level and they're having to restructure their cost base. And I've seen examples where the UAE business or the UAE market was doing very well in isolation. But then globally, they look at the business and maybe it's underperforming.
Yep.
They have a restructure and often impact in this region, because I don't have the statistics and would be interested to gather some data, but the cost of employing someone here perhaps compared to in another region, or maybe there's a regional role which doesn't require someone to be here. In the past, they were based here. Now the organisation says, well, we're going to move you to the UK or the UK or the US, and they're saying, no, I want to stay in the UAE. So these individuals are without work, and one knock-on effect with that is in the past, you've maybe lost your job, you've maybe gone back to your home country, whether it's India, whether it's the UK. But now with the ease of access to a visa, whether they have a golden visa, whether they're set up a company, people are not leaving, people are staying. So now you have not only people in jobs looking for roles, you have a lot of very good talent based here already who's available immediately and with local experience. So as a client, you can now hire someone. I would say half of the shortlists I'm sending now have
Yeah.
some people who are immediately available, maybe half, maybe a third. So as a client, that's hugely attractive because you could have someone within your organization in a couple of weeks. And as everyone in the UAE will know, often they want someone ASAP. Everything's now, and bringing someone in who's immediately available is a big advantage that companies now have.
Okay. What about fractional CFOs? Do you see a rise in fractional CFOs or senior professionals, project based or for a short duration? Do you see that?
Huge, yeah, huge. I see a huge opportunity. If I compare it to the UK market, there's such a strong developed interim fractional contract market, where some people will only do contract work, and I don't know how long it's taken for that to take place. Here, there isn't that yet. There is a lot of noise around the whole fractional element. The change in visas has made that more achievable. Um, I think there's sometimes a gap in understanding what a fractional CFO is meant to do or can deliver. Um, I've seen examples where a company hires a fractional CFO, but really they just want them to be there. They're not actually able to really give that strategic insight. But I do think it's an education piece that is changing. And if this region could develop a strong interim or contract market, that would be such a well received addition, I feel, for candidates especially. But yeah, it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment for sure.
Yeah. But do you have any hiring mandates for fractional CFOs or, even auditors or professional services?
Yeah, currently nothing within the fractional space. I have, because of the availability now of fractional CFOs, it's now a conversation that I can have more so with clients, i.e., ex-client, you're looking to hire a full-time person, maybe with notice period or time it takes to interview, there's going to be a gap where you can't bring someone on board. Maybe the prior person has left. So I can actively have these conversations with clients. And I did a few months back and say, well, your outgoing person leaves in May, your incoming person starts in September. What is your plan for that period of time? So giving someone an interim solution, whether it's an interim profile, whether it's a fractional CFO, or likewise speaking to people and saying, do you really need a fully fledged full-time CFO? Could you, for now, would it be better as part of your growth journey to bring someone in on a fractional basis and then from there develop into a full-time person?
Okay. And Louis, when you hire, right, do you hire professionals available locally or organizations are also okay with candidates overseas? But I think locally, a lot of candidates are available locally. But what's your take?
Yeah, so local talent always takes priority. There's so many people available now, like we mentioned, either in roles, looking for roles. They're either a victim of a restructure and now available immediately. Lots of people have moved here in the last 2 years with no UAE or GCC experience without a job because they're sat back in the home country. Like, for example, if you're in the UK, you're in London, you want to move to the UAE, you've got a 3 month notice. So the time you interview, it's 4 or 5 months to bring you on board. If you are a typical finance manager, for example, it's very unlikely that the company is going to wait 4 or 5 months when I have an abundance of people who are very good and skilled here already. However, the only caveat is sometimes super niche expertise that isn't here will be hired from outside, but less and less so than the local talent, unfortunately.
Lewis, you mentioned a very interesting point which spoke about, mobility of candidates, right? Of, especially of senior professionals. I've seen that a lot of mid to senior professionals, they're paid so well that when you move
Mhm.
to another role, as you mentioned, they have to take a cut, right? So what is what kind of growth can professionals expect, and how should they look at their career? Should they even think about it, or it's all about being paid well and staying happy? What's your take?
That's the question we're all asking, right? What does a career look like nowadays? I think from what I know, it changes over time. I've had conversations with people who maybe they're in the early stages of their career, mid-20s, where they really want to grow. Maybe they're in a multinational, they want that big brand on the CV. Then from there, they maybe want to focus in a specific area. Maybe a family comes along, their priorities no longer are around the career, but are more around having time with the family. I had an example of a senior guy who was based here. He wasn't loving what he was doing and was looking for a while, and he
Yeah.
actually got an opportunity in a bigger market internally. Now, from a pure career perspective, that was a great move. So he made the move. But within 6 months, he was on the phone to me saying that from a family personal perspective, this isn't where my family want to be. So it's in a different country. I need to get back to the UAE. I've decided that at the moment, my priorities have shifted from a purely single focus, single minded career to I might have to just maybe sit tight for now, and maybe the focus is the family. So I think it really depends. I don't think there's a right or wrong way, and that will change over time.
Do you get a lot of candidates in the UAE, since you're from the UK, right? They want to move to London. So do you hire for in the UK as well, or it's just the UAE? Do you see the interest?
So I do see some interest. I don't personally recruit for roles in the UK, but having worked there, I have a lot of colleagues who still remain within the industry, recruiting finance and accounting roles. So I have quite a good network in that location. Who, if anyone's interested, can always introduce people to. Kind of to my first point, you need to be an expert, and I would just be headhunting people on LinkedIn, which isn't really what I'm paid to do. I'm really paid for my network. Of course, headhunting comes into it, but I know
Yeah.
much better people than me in the London market within the accountancy and finance niche. But yeah, there is some demand, but the UK, as people know, is having some challenges at the moment. So maybe not as desirable as it once was.
Yeah. And when you're talking about family offices, hedge funds, we've read so much about family offices, hedge funds, VCs, even law firms, private equity, setting up offices here from the UK, from the US, and of course India. So do they really hire, or they just set up an office here and it's just one or two fund managers? How does it operate? Do you see a lot of hiring there?
Both sides. I think it's the trendy thing to do now.
Yep.
See, I don't know the detail in terms of the financial benefits, but clearly there's lots of benefits of basing yourself here. It
Yep.
depends on, are people just doing it as a almost very small office, or are people fully investing and setting up here? I've seen
Yep.
both sides.
Yep.
It'd be interesting to observe the trend over the next couple of years to see if people really start building out the family office is from a finance team perspective. But like any family office, from what I've seen, they're never huge in scale. So they typically have quite a lean accountancy and finance team anyway. So yeah, it's an interesting trend that perhaps will evolve over the coming months and years.
Thanks, Lewis. I've got a couple of questions, I guess three. So, one of them is, on your LinkedIn, you recently mentioned that, in my opinion, the next few months can be pivotal for job seekers. So, why the mention? What do you see?
Yeah, this market is very cyclical, right? And this is always what people need to understand. We do have lots of periods where maybe the recruitment tails off, whether that's due to summer.
Yeah,
Traditionally, summer is a quieter period. I mean, for me this year, I think summer, I still saw lots of activity. People were still based in the region. I think the days of not being based here for months, maybe not there anymore. But it's a very cyclical market. And for me, Q4, which is now until Christmas, we have a solid 3-month period with minimal disruption. So people can really maximize that time. And even we're in October now, so in the last 6 weeks, I've seen a real pickup in hiring conversations. But just to reiterate, it doesn't mean that your phone's going to fall off the hook because there's so many roles and people are hiring and there's not enough candidates. It's still very competitive, but that's the real reason. We've got a real uninterrupted period of 3 or 4 months where people can double down.
Okay. Lewis, so you say there's a surplus of finance, tax, accounting talent in the UAE, so people have to be patient. It won't happen overnight. What's the approx timeline a new job seeker in the UAE, should consider approximately?
Are they based here already? They have the experience, or they're looking to find a role from
So,
afar?
so they've moved here looking for an opportunity. So I know a lot of people from the big fours in India who have actually quit and they moved here from India, from Canada, quite a few of them. And they stayed here for 3 months, 4 months, and none of them
Mm,
could find an opportunity, which is so unusual, right? Usually in three, four
mm.
months, you figure something. So I'm sure you see this trend too. So what would you tell them? What would you tell them? What
Yeah.
should they be doing?
When I get asked this question, I always tell people that you could get very lucky and
Yeah.
something comes along which really matches your profile and you could have a role within a couple of weeks. Now, is that common? No. It really can range, I think, from 3 months all the way up to 9 months and beyond. Dependent on seniority, of course. If you're a senior finance professional, it can take longer.
Yeah.
Um, but like you mentioned, and something to reiterate is moving here without a job does not guarantee you will get a job. And it's a huge consideration. And I will never tell someone to do it. I can just give advice. And I have plenty of case studies of people who've made it work and
Yeah.
plenty of those who haven't made it work. And I think ultimately it depends on your personal situation. If I was a late 20s, early 30s person who didn't have that many commitments, maybe had some savings behind me, I would take the jump and back myself to
Yeah.
secure something. But if I did not secure something, I would rather leave knowing that I gave it a shot than
Yeah.
not at all. However, not everyone can do that. Not everyone should do that. If you've got a family, you've got things to like commitments, then you just need to really think if it's actually a worthwhile move to make, because it's a funny term I use. It's not all glamour. Right? People look from the outside and, oh, Dubai, I want to live in Dubai, work in Dubai. Of course, it's great. That's why everyone wants to be here, but it's not without its challenges. And I had an example a couple of weeks ago. I had a candidate that was here on holiday and they've been looking for 2 years to move to the region. They're based outside of Dubai. They have 2 kids and they're a single earner. So this individual was the only earner within the family. His partner does not work, and he was talking to me about moving and whatever. And he's typically probably going to earn maybe 30 to 40,000 dirhams a month. I asked him the question that is that the right decision for you based on the fact you need to consider schooling fees for 2 kids and accommodation. That alone is going to eat into your monthly salary. So you really need to think hard and clear, is this the right thing for you? Because it's not perhaps what it was many years ago with huge salaries and a huge net saving each month. That's no guarantee.
True that. That's so true. So, Louis, what are you most excited about in the GCC market? I mean, what are you looking forward to, and what's next for your firm? How are you thinking about it?
Sure. Sure. So for me, I've had a lot of conversations around professionalizing the organization, professionalizing the finance function. Lots of companies now, I think, are realizing that the finance function is pivotal in the and can contribute to the success of the organization. Whereas in the past, perhaps it was treated as back office and it's really a cost center. Now, there are people with that mindset, and I think they will always have that mindset. But I think there is more of a consideration around what the strong processes and skill set that the finance function can bring. So professionalizing the organization, bringing in people from more developed organizations or more developed markets who know what good looks like to then bring these organizations up to where they're aspiring to be. Um, and if that can be achieved, and the growth of the region, obviously all of the positive media, people moving here, investment is a great place to be. I think for me personally, my focus for now is just
Yep.
really networking, building relationships, doing the job of recruitment, not getting sidetracked into strategy and whatever. I'm a small business right now. At some point, those conversations will come. But for me,
Yep.
it's adding value, speaking to candidates, building my network, creating relationships with new clients, and really just being, hopefully, a
Yep.
reputable recruiter in the region that maybe I don't get you a job, but I'm always going to be here to provide advice. And hopefully
Yep.
that's well received with obviously the finance professionals in the region.
Absolutely. That's so well put. So, Lewis, if we want to be a part of your network, what do we do? I mean, it's not easy replying to LinkedIn messages. It's tough. Do you have a newsletter
Sure,
where we
sure.
could join in? What is something of that sort?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, connect me on LinkedIn. Have a website. So email me on I have a couple of email addresses on there. You can email me. I am always looking to provide value via
Yep.
LinkedIn in general, via content. So if you try and connect with me, maybe I think there's a follow feature now, right, where you can see
Yep.
people's content. So yeah,
Yep.
LinkedIn's probably the main one. At some point, yeah, I'm looking to release regular updates on the market. Will be via
Yep.
email, via LinkedIn, the usual platforms. But yeah, they're the best ways to contact me.
Okay, amazing. We have this question from Abhijit. His question is: do you think the hiring trends in the UAE are leaning more towards skill-based or role-based recruitment?
What do you mean by role based? I guess it depends on
Yeah.
skill. There are certain skills that I think we mentioned are in demand.
Yeah.
Maybe FP&A, finance transformation, specific systems. If you have systems experience, maybe that's a way to differentiate you. I think that's the key. If you can differentiate yourself, then you will stand out amongst others. But it's easier said than done because there's only so many ways to be different. Um, but I
Yep.
think sometimes clients just want someone in to do the job, and
Yep.
they want someone probably more role based who's already done it. Right? Because when someone resigns, often you see the fear within the hiring manager's eyes that, oh my God, X person resigned. What's going to do? The world's going to burn down, etc. And sometimes they just want someone to come in and get the job done. So yeah, there's a combination, but definitely role based is still quite common.
I have this question. When you talk about resignations, we don't see a lot of resignations if you compare this to say India or the UK because it's a different market as you mentioned, right? There's not always another opportunity that will pay you a plus 30% or a plus 20%. Okay, so what I'm trying to understand is which sectors or which industry has the highest attrition in finance. Where there's always an opportunity for you.
I don't know
Or
if it's sector. I would say it's
yeah,
just culture. Culture is the main element. People are so focused around culture now. What's the working environment? Is there micromanagement? What's the setup of the team? Is there a plan for me to progress,
yeah,
etc. So I wouldn't say there's a particular sector or industry. It's just culture, and unfortunately, there are some organisations and some environments that maybe don't have the culture that you're looking for. So
yeah,
you just need to do your due diligence, and that's, I guess, a great bit of advice for people looking to make the move, regardless if it's a multinational. I've heard examples
yeah.
of multinationals, I've heard examples of local groups. Like, there's no guarantee that the culture is what you're looking for. You need to do your due diligence. Ask the question, why is the role available? Okay, you're interviewing for the role of a head of finance. You're the fourth head of finance in 12 months. Maybe there's there's something you need to understand what's the reason behind that. So do your due diligence, understand the demographic of the team. Maybe you know someone in there, maybe you know someone who's a second degree connection. Do your due diligence around the organization you're joining. But you can only do so much. So as long as you can safely say that you are happy to make that informed decision based on the due diligence you've done, then that's all you can do. Unless you start in that organization, you'll never fully know. But there is perhaps more that people can do than just saying, okay, I've got a job, sounds good, let's join. And then you're on the phone to me in 3 months saying, that wasn't perhaps what I was looking for.
Yep, well said. We'll take two more questions. We have this question from Rohit. He is like, hey, hi Louis, thanks for the update. You talked about the Big Four in Riyadh and UAE. Can you also share on the local LLC companies having good exposure, and what about Oman, Qatar? Is the market still good? Thanks, Rohit.
So local groups, is that what that's referring to perhaps? Local
Yep.
businesses?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of local businesses, privately owned businesses in the region. Definitely a good target for people. I don't know, I'd be interested to see the statistics of local family businesses in this region compared to others, but there is a huge amount of them. And
Yep.
people are considering working there perhaps more than they did before, because everyone, I mean, when I was growing up, everyone was, oh, multinational, super stable, you get the brand, etc. But they're not always the best roles in this region. And some of the local businesses are super progressive, super dynamic, looking to grow. They have a real, I guess, control within the market. They're all doing very well. So definitely consider local businesses, and they cover all industries. In terms of other parts of the GCC, so people now, I think, are considering other countries outside of just the UAE, right? I have spoken to people. Qatar is a big one that is definitely on people's radar more and more. Conversations I'm having with people, oh, Lewis, I consider Qatar. So, yes, I would look at other countries other than just the UAE. There is less roles. It's just the way it is. There is less roles. So, definitely consider it, but I can't guarantee it's going to be any easier. But it'd be interesting to see over the next few years how maybe some of those countries evolve as well.
Thanks, Louis. So Louis, I have this question. What about small businesses? I was just looking at some stats, and it mentioned that the number of SMEs, small and medium enterprises in the UAE, have crossed a million. That was their target. So do you hire also for small and medium enterprises? Do they engage with recruiters? Do you
Sure.
see that
Yeah, I would
happening?
say SMEs, it's a broad
Yeah.
term, right? What is an SME?
Yep.
Is it a couple of headcount? Is it 50, 100? Is it based on revenue? But yeah, typically SMEs are a client of mine and other recruiters because they may not have internal recruitment team. They're often leaner in their general operations, so they may prefer to outsource recruitment. They come to someone like me, we provide them a service. So yeah, definitely SMEs. I think the only thing to consider with an SME is how sizable is the finance function.
Yep.
Right? Maybe there's a lot of noise, as you mentioned, companies setting up here. How big are these organizations? Are they a two-person organization where they're not going to need a fully fledged finance team? Maybe they're a small business, they have a more developed finance team in another part of the world. So yeah, SMEs is definitely a focus and is a huge growth area, but just generally smaller finance teams naturally. So there might be a couple of
Yep.
roles. And I think that's the main difference to larger regions as well, is there's a lot of clients here, there's lots of companies, but how many of them have a sizable finance function? Maybe they have a larger finance function in India or in London, and the finance function here is a bit leaner. So there's just
Yep.
generally less finance roles in the internal finance function here.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll take this last question from Siddhant. He mentions, how can companies balance Saudization quotas with attracting global talent in non-oil sectors? If you want to take this one.
Yes, challenging one. I think it's a topic that every organisation is struggling with, to be honest, is finding good talent with maybe from Saudi Maybe I have seen examples where you bring someone in who is maybe from a more developed market and they work closely with the Saudi talent, and maybe they work on a plan to help them grow in the future. Maybe they're not ready right now. But yeah, that is a challenge that I think every organisation's facing. It'd be interesting to see over the next couple of years as Saudi grows and evolves if that's something that becomes less problematic. But yeah, it is a challenge at the moment that everyone's facing.
Okay, cool. Lewis, we've asked you a lot of questions. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have anything else to add? Do you want to close it with something under 30 seconds? Or you've said it. And I've asked
Yeah.
you enough.
So yeah, for sure. So I don't want it to be a negative
Yeah.
conversation. It's a great place
Yeah.
to live. There's lots of opportunities here, and there are examples of people, whether in location or outside of location, securing roles. It's
Yeah.
not impossible, but it's not easy. It does take time. You do need to be patient. And can I guarantee you're going to get a job here? Unfortunately, not. Some people just won't secure a role. There is just a huge demand and supply imbalance. However, I am a believer with the right approach and constant daily repetition and focus, you can make some progress. So this cannot be a ad hoc, apply for the occasional job and hope someone finds you, because at the moment, that's just not going to cut it.
Absolutely. Thanks a ton, Lewis.